The woman in the shed. The rusted padlock on the shed door swung uselessly from its hasp. Leo frowned. He distinctly remembered locking it after retrieving the snow shovel last spring. He hadn't been back since. Probably just the kids messing around, he thought, though Max had been unusually well-behaved lately. Still, best to check. He pushed the door inward, the hinges groaning in protest. The musty smell of damp wood and forgotten tools filled his nostrils. He reached for the string hanging from the bare bulb, yanking it. The weak light flickered, revealing the cluttered interior. Lawn mower, bags of fertilizer, a stack of cracked terracotta pots, and a woman. She was curled up on a pile of old tarps, her dark hair a tangled mess against the faded blue plastic. She wore a long, floral dress that seemed wildly out of place amidst the garden implements. Leo coughed, instantly regretting it as the sound echoed in the small space. Her eyes fluttered open. They were a startling shade of green, wide and unfocused. She blinked, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Where?" she whispered, her voice raspy. Leo took a step back, bumping into a watering can. "Whoa, hey. It's okay. You're in my shed. In my backyard. Who are you?" She sat up slowly, wincing. I don't know." Leo stared at her. "You don't know? You don't know your own name?" "No." She shook her head, then pressed her fingers to her temples. "It's all blank. Like a chalkboard wiped clean. Amnesia." "Seriously?" Leo's life was already a sitcom gone wrong, now he was adding a plot twist ripped straight from daytime television. He ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "Okay," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Okay, well, I'm Leo. Leo Maxwell. And you're in my shed, which is in the backyard of my house, which is in, well, never mind. Do you remember anything at all?" She looked around the shed, her gaze lingering on a rusty trowel. "Nothing concrete. Just feelings. Impressions. A sense of urgency." Leo edged closer, cautiously. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was some elaborate prank. Urgency about what? "I don't know. That's the frustrating part." She gestured wildly, then seemed to deflate. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be yelling. I'm scared." He saw the genuine fear in her eyes, the vulnerability in her slumped shoulders. Prank or not, she was clearly distressed. Leo softened. "It's okay. Look, let's get you inside. You can have some water, maybe something to eat. We can figure this out." As she stood, a small, leather-bound journal slipped from the folds of her dress, landing with a soft thud on the tarp. Leo picked it up. The cover was worn, the edges frayed. There was no title, no inscription. Just a simple, elegant design embossed on the front, a stylized constellation. He flipped it open. The pages were filled with elegant, looping script, a language he didn't recognize, except one word scrawled larger than the rest, near the back of the book. "Max," he read aloud, his voice catching in his throat. The woman gasped. "Max? Who is Max?" she asked, her eyes searching his. Leo swallowed hard, a knot forming in his stomach. "He's my son." A glimmer of hope. Leo rubbed his temples, the grit of exhaustion clinging to him like dust. "All right," he sighed, the word heavy with reluctance. "You can stay. Just for tonight. We'll figure something out in the morning." Willow's face lit up, a genuine smile crinkling the corners of her eyes. "Thank you, Leo. You won't regret this." He busied himself making up the spare room, muttering about threadbare sheets and the questionable stain on the rug. It wasn't much, but it was better than the shed. When he emerged, Max was already tugging on Willow's hand, leading her towards the back door. "Come on. I want to show you my fort." Max's voice, usually a soft murmur, was surprisingly loud and clear. Leo watched them go, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. He followed at a distance, leaning against the porch railing as Max led Willow to the far corner of the garden. He'd built a ramshackle fort there, a tangle of branches and old blankets. Usually Max played alone, his imaginary friends the only occupants. But now Willow was crawling inside, her laughter echoing through the air. Leo saw Max's shy grin as he pointed out the secret entrance and the lookout tower. He couldn't hear their words, but he saw the way Willow listened intently, her eyes sparkling with genuine interest. She wasn't just humoring him, she was truly engaged. He watched them play for what felt like hours. Willow helped Max reinforce the fort, finding stray branches and weaving them into the structure. She told him stories, her voice a soothing melody carried on the gentle breeze. He saw Max, usually withdrawn and quiet, blossom under her attention. He was animated, expressive, his laughter ringing out like wind chimes. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Leo felt a pang of something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. A fragile, flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, this strange woman who'd stumbled into their lives could be something more than just a complication. As darkness deepened, he called them in for dinner. The meal was a chaotic affair, filled with Max's excited chatter and Willow's gentle encouragement. Even Leo found himself smiling, the weight on his shoulders feeling a little lighter. After Max was tucked into bed, exhausted but content, Leo found Willow washing dishes. He's really taken to you?" Leo said, surprised by the tremor in his voice. Willow smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "He's a special boy, Leo. He just needs someone to see him." Leo looked at her, searching her eyes for answers he knew she didn't have. The mystery of her presence still loomed large, but for the first time, it felt less like a threat and more like a possibility. A glimmer of hope in the darkness. Whispers of the future. The soft, measured breathing of Willow, asleep at last, filled the small cabin. Leo felt a surge of guilt, a thief in his own home, but the insistent questions refused to be silenced. On the table beside her cot sat the journal, its well-worn leather whispering stories of age. He'd fought the urge to pry, respecting her privacy, but fragments of overheard conversations, the fervent light in her eyes when she looked at Max, they all suggested a truth he couldn't ignore. He lifted the book, its heft surprised him. Inside, her handwriting danced across the pages, sometimes precise and elegant, at others a frantic, near-illegible scrawl. Mostly, it was commonplace, observations of the surrounding woods, hesitant stabs at recalling her past, sketches of unfamiliar constellations. Then he landed on an entry that stole the air from his lungs, Starchild. The prophecy foretells of one born beneath the blood moon. He holds the linchpin. The convergence looms. Leo's brow furrowed as he leafed back through the pages. There it was, echoed in different phrases, sprinkled throughout her thoughts. Child of starlight. The key to unlocking the ancient ones. Harbinger of utter ruin. He skimmed faster, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. References to celestial mechanics, primeval energies, and beings of pure luminance and shadow filled the pages. It read like the pulpy sci-fi Max devoured with relish. Could this be the answer to everything? Or was Willow simply lost in delusion? Perhaps the head injury had scrambled her mind. He craved a rational explanation, something solid to cling to. He was just a single father, a simple carpenter, not some pawn in a cosmic game. He returned to the Starchild entry, searching for clues. Blood moon. Max had been born during an eclipse. The moon painted in an eerie crimson hue. Leo recalled staring at it through the hospital window, a prickle of unease crawling up his spine. He snapped the journal shut, the sound amplified in the still cabin. This was madness. Prophecies, star children, pure fantasy. He was letting his fears run rampant, fueled by exhaustion and the strangeness of their meeting. He rose and replaced the journal, his hands betraying him with a slight tremor. He needed clarity, rational thought. Willow was likely a woman with a wild imagination, adrift and lost. He'd help her find her way back to her life, wherever that was, and then they could put this behind them. But as he turned, his gaze drifted towards Max, sleeping peacefully in his cot across the room. He seemed so tiny, so vulnerable, bathed in the silvery moonlight streaming through the window. And for a split second, Leo imagined a subtle, almost invisible glimmer radiating from him, like captured starlight dusting his skin. He shook his head, attributing it to tricks of the light, exhaustion playing games. He had to ground himself. He had to shield Max from whatever this lunacy was. Even if it meant shielding him from Willow herself. The unexplainable. The brick felt rough against Max's cheek as he was shoved against the school wall. 3 shadows loomed over him, blocking the pale autumn sun. "Give it back, crybaby," sneered a voice Max recognized as Kevin's, the undisputed champion of schoolyard torment. Max squeezed his eyes shut, clutching the small, worn book tighter. It wasn't just any book, it was his mother's journal, the one Leo had finally deemed safe enough for him to read snippets from. He wasn't about to hand it over to Kevin, not after reading about her dreams, her hopes for him. "I said give it." Kevin's hand snaked out, grabbing for the journal. Max stumbled, his grip loosening. A sob caught in his throat. He hated this, hated feeling small and helpless. He wanted them to just go away. Leo, perpetually late, hurried across the schoolyard, a travel mug of lukewarm coffee sloshing dangerously close to the brim. He saw Max pinned against the wall, a knot of older boys surrounding him. His heart lurched. He knew that look. That was the same look Max had when nightmares woke him screaming. "Hey!" Leo bellowed, his voice cracking mid-sentence. He started towards them, a clumsy, ungainly figure charging into battle. He was still a good distance away when something odd happened. A heavy metal bin, usually chained to a lamppost at least 10 feet away, hurtled across the pavement. It slammed into the ground between Kevin and Max with a deafening clang, showering them with stray crisp packets and discarded apple cores. The bullies yelped, jumping back in surprise. Leo stopped dead in his tracks, his jaw slack. He hadn't seen anyone near the bin. Had it just come loose? But it wasn't just loose, it was across the yard. Kevin and his cronies, startled and smelling of coffee grounds and old banana peels Leo's mug had, predictably, emptied itself during his charge, scrambled away, muttering threats they didn't seem quite convinced of. Max, trembling, stared at the bin, then up at Leo, his eyes wide and confused. He still clutched the journal, his knuckles white. Leo cautiously approached Max, his gaze darting around, searching for any logical explanation. A strong gust of wind? A prank? But the air was still. And the bin was far too heavy to be moved by a simple push, especially uphill. "You okay, buddy?" Leo asked, his voice unusually subdued. He knelt down, ignoring the damp patch spreading on his jeans. Max nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on the bin. I don't know what happened." Leo placed a hand on Max's shoulder, feeling the boys trembling. "Me neither, kiddo. Me neither." He squeezed gently, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. Inside, a cold dread was beginning to bloom. He didn't understand, but he knew one thing: something impossible had just happened. And he had a sinking feeling it was connected to Max's truth revealed. The shed air hung thick with the scent of sawdust and something else, something floral that clung to Willow. He held the worn leather journal aloft, the moonlight glinting off its tarnished clasp. This explains a lot, and yet explains nothing at all. Willow sat perched on the edge of the workbench, her face pale in the dim light. She hadn't met his gaze since he'd stormed in, journal in hand. "I told you I don't remember writing any of that. But it's your handwriting, Willow, and it's about Max, about abilities, about some prophecy." Leo felt a nervous laugh bubble up, a coping mechanism he usually reserved for parent-teacher conferences. "Look, I'm a carpenter, not a conspiracy theorist. My son is good at math and likes building Lego castles. That's it." She finally looked up, her eyes filled with a sadness that cut him to the quick. "That's not all he is, Leo, and I'm not who you think I am." He lowered the journal slightly. "Enlighten me, because right now, I'm thinking I let a crazy person sleep in my shed." He instantly regretted the harshness, seeing the flinch in her posture. Willow took a shaky breath. "My name is Willow Astria, and I'm from the future." Leo snorted. He couldn't help it. "Okay, now I know you're messing with me. I know it sounds impossible," she rushed on, "but it's the truth. The journal, its fragmented memories, hastily recorded before I came here." She gestured vaguely around the shed. "My mission was to protect Max. To guide him. Protect him from what? Bad grades? Splintered wood. From a darkness that is coming. A darkness only he can stop." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Max, he's not just good at math and Lego. He possesses a power, a latent ability that will determine the fate of everything." Leo felt a cold dread crawl up his spine. This wasn't just amnesia. This was something else entirely. He glanced at the journal again, the scribbled words seeming to pulse in the moonlight. "What kind of power?" "I can't say. Not yet. Knowing too much too soon could alter the timeline, create unforeseen consequences." Willow's hands clenched into fists. "All I can tell you is that he is the key. And the future, our future, depends on him." He ran a hand through his hair, the scent of sawdust clinging to his fingers, now a suffocating reminder of his ordinary life, the life that seemed to be crumbling around him. "And you? What's your part in all this? Why were you in my shed?" Willow's gaze softened, focusing on him with an intensity that made his heart pound. "My purpose is to ensure he's ready, to help him unlock his potential, and to protect him. Both of you." Her voice hitched, and he saw a single tear trace a path down her cheek. "And as for why I was in your shed, I think a part of me knew, even without my memories, that this was where I needed to be, that you were the one I could trust." Hunted. The first sign was the chill. Not the crisp, autumn nip that had been hinting at winter, but a bone-deep cold that seeped into the marrow. Leo noticed it first while unloading groceries from his beat-up pickup. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, but a shiver ran down his spine that had nothing to do with the weather. Later, Willow stirred from her spot on the porch swing. She'd been sketching in her worn notebook, the charcoal smudging on her fingers. "Something's not right," she murmured, her gaze fixed on the normally placid street. Leo, distracted by wrestling a bag of potatoes, just grunted. "You and me both. Try explaining that to the electric company. Apparently, I found her sleeping in my shed isn't a valid excuse for skipping a bill." Willow didn't smile. Her brow was furrowed, her eyes distant. "They're here." "Who's here? The electric company? Because I swear I'll hide you in the attic. They'll never find you." Leo chuckled nervously, trying to lighten the mood he didn't understand. "The ones I told you about." From then. She couldn't bring herself to say the future. The word felt like a lie, even though she knew it was true. Leo stopped wrestling the potatoes. He looked at Willow, really looked at her, and saw the fear etched on her face. It wasn't the vague, confused fear of someone struggling with amnesia. This was a primal, hunted fear. That's when he saw them. 3 figures clad in dark, utilitarian clothing were walking down the street. They moved with a disturbing, almost unnatural efficiency. Their faces were obscured by the shadows of deep hoods, but Leo could feel their eyes on him, cold and assessing. They didn't look like they belonged. Not in Harmony Creek, not anywhere. "Inside," Leo said, his voice tight. He grabbed Max, who had been kicking a soccer ball in the yard, and practically shoved him towards the front door. Willow followed, her hand instinctively reaching for Max's. He barely had time to lock the door before the first jolt hit. The house shuddered, the windows rattled. Max screamed, burying his face in Willow's side. "What was that?" Leo demanded, his heart pounding against his ribs. Willow's eyes glowed faintly. "Energy, a disruptor. They're trying to neutralize the protective wards." "Wards? You put wards on my house?" Leo asked, incredulous. He barely had time to process the question before the front door splintered inward with a deafening crash. The figures stood silhouetted in the doorway, the cold radiating from them like a physical force. One of them raised a hand, and a bolt of crackling energy shot towards Max. Leo reacted without thinking. He threw himself in front of his son, bracing for the impact. Unlocking the potential. Leo wrestled the minivan into life, its protesting cough echoing in the pre-dawn gloom. Willow buckled herself in beside Max, whose eyes were wide and darting between the rearview mirror and the shadowy trees lining the driveway. "They're coming, Dad," Max whispered, his voice tight with fear. "I know, buddy. Just breathe." Leo slammed the gear shift into drive, the tires spitting gravel as they lurched forward. He risked a glance in the mirror. Headlights were already appearing at the end of the road, twin beams cutting through the fog. "Right, left, then straight," Willow instructed, her voice calm despite the urgency. "There's a logging road about a mile ahead. They won't expect us to take it." Leo followed her directions, the van rattling over the uneven terrain of the logging road. Branches scraped against the sides, and the air filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. "How do you know all this?" he asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Willow frowned, touching her temple. "It's coming back. Like pieces of a puzzle. I know we need to get to the old observatory. It's the only place where Max can learn to control it." Max fidgeted in the back seat. "Control what, exactly? I still don't understand." "Focus, Max," Leo said. "Remember what happened in the shed? You moved those tools without touching them. We need you to do that again. Can you try?" Max closed his eyes, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's hard. It feels like trying to push something really heavy." "Think about lifting a feather," Willow suggested softly. "Imagine its lightness, its delicate balance. Let that feeling guide you." The van lurched violently as Leo swerved to avoid a fallen log. In the back, a toolbox slid across the floor. Max gasped, his eyes snapping open. The toolbox stopped abruptly, hovering inches from the back door. Leo's jaw dropped. I did it," Max exclaimed, his face lighting up with a triumphant grin. "Again," Leo urged, checking the rearview mirror. The headlights were gone, but he knew they wouldn't be far behind. Max concentrated, picturing the toolbox floating. It wobbled, then steadied. He moved it slowly towards the front of the van, a silent ballet of metal and mind. Suddenly, Willow cried out, clutching her head. "No! The symbol, the obsidian, they're going to." Her voice trailed off, her eyes unfocused. "Willow, what is it? What did you see?" Leo demanded, pulling the van to a screeching halt. Willow blinked, her gaze slowly returning to the present. I don't know. It was just a flash. But it felt dangerous." She rubbed her temples again, her brow furrowed. "The observatory, we have to hurry." The panic in her voice was clear. Whatever she had seen, it had shaken her to her core. The shield of hope. The warehouse assaulted the senses, acrid ozone, the metallic tang of terror. Figures in identical obsidian uniforms thrashed about, weapons aloft, their movements spastic and confused. A fragile haven in the stark glare of overhead lamps, Willow stood before Max, her palm extended. Static danced in the air. There. Disoriented, Max muttered, flinching as a wild shot pinged off a nearby rack. What did you unleash? It's not precisely me, Willow's voice was taut. It's the Nexus. This location. It amplifies certain resonance. We can exploit that. Exploit it how? Order takeout. Max shot back, struggling to reinforce his makeshift barricade of upturned containers. A trickle of perspiration snaked down his forehead. He was adrift, hopelessly so. To weave a bulwark, Willow stated, unamused. A bulwark of hope. Of sanctuary. A ward against their darkness. Max gave her a disbelieving stare. A bulwark of hope? I'm an accountant, Willow, a single parent. I'm running on fumes, let alone enough to construct some kind of ethereal defense. You possess it, Max. Far more than you acknowledge. Picture Daniel. Recall all you've sacrificed for him. That's hope incarnate. That's love. Draw upon it. Willow's gaze, typically gentle, now blazed with unwavering certitude. He met her eyes, transfixed by her resolute faith, and something within him shifted. Daniel's sunbeam grin, his bubbling laughter, the desperate grip of his small hand came to mind. A nascent warmth blossomed in his chest, combating the dread. All right, he conceded, his voice gaining resolve. All right, Daniel, it is. So then, shut your eyes. Register the energy all around, the warehouse's industrial thrum, the men's palpable fear. Now concentrate that feeling, that love for Daniel. His well-being, his future. Willow's voice was a calming anchor in the tempest. Max obeyed, picturing Daniel sprinting toward him, arms wide, his face alight with pure delight. He locked onto that vision, siphoning strength. A prickling sensation awoke in his palms, a subtle heat blooming through his limbs. Excellent, Willow prompted. Now outstretch your hands. Envision that feeling, that love, flowing from you, coalescing into a barrier between them and us. He hesitated, then pushed his hands forward, palms facing out. He visualized the image of Daniel materializing, solidifying into a tangible force, a shimmering partition of luminance. Abruptly, a wave of energy erupted from him, a visible distortion shimmering in the air. The black-clad figures staggered back, recoiling as if scorched. A faint, translucent screen materialized before them, refracting the harsh fluorescent light into a gentle, comforting radiance. I actually did that? Max questioned, opening his eyes, dumbfounded. Willow grinned, a genuine, incandescent smile that chased all shadows from her countenance. Yes, Max, you did indeed. You conjured the shield of hope. A new beginning. The attic room reeked of dust and bygone eras, an odor that shadowed Willow like a persistent memory. Silver light from the moon streamed through the grimy window, laying down luminous stripes across the floor where dust motes pirouette in the stillness. From downstairs drifted the subdued cadence of Leo's voice, punctuated now and then by Max's bright peal of laughter. Lego construction, judging by the sounds of it. A sudden ache resonated in her chest, unexpected and profound. A haven. Kinship. Elusive concepts she couldn't recall ever possessing, now yearned for with an intensity that bordered on fear. She followed the meandering track of an old leak on the slanted ceiling, her thoughts a jumble of fragmented past events and an uncertain future. Escape remained a possibility. To disappear into the sprawling city, to reinvent herself where they couldn't find her. Yet the notion rang false, a half-formed melody. Max. The trusting weight of his little hand in hers, his absolute faith mirrored in his gaze. Could she really abandon him? And Leo, with his world-weary smile and understated fortitude, had offered her refuge and opportunity. A chance to, what? Assimilate? Could she even pull it off? The aged boards groaned underfoot as she moved to the small, dirt-streaked window. Outside, the world was a mosaic of shadows and the cold gleam of streetlights. Her history existed out there, somewhere, lurking in the murk. But her tomorrow was here, in this time-worn house, with a solo father and the little boy who needed her. Inhaling deeply, she started down the steep staircase. The sounds of the Lego game swelled, beckoning her like a beacon. She lingered in the doorway, leaning against the jamb, unnoticed for a moment. Leo was kneeling, his brow furrowed in fierce concentration as he attempted to attach a minuscule azure block to a turret. Max sat beside him, the tip of his tongue peeking from the corner of his mouth as he followed every move. Leo glanced up, his eyes meeting hers. Lines deepened at the corners in a warm smile. Hey, trouble sleeping? Willow shook her head. Just thinking. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning. He knew the battle she waged within herself. And, he prompted softly. She entered the room, the scent of plastic and Leo's familiar cologne enveloping her. Kneeling next to Max, she brushed a stray lock from his forehead. I'm staying, she declared, the words emerging with a strength that surprised even her. I'm staying here with both of you. Max shrieked with joy, flinging his arms around her neck. Really, really for keeps? Really, really? She affirmed, hugging him close. Leo's smile broadened, lighting up his face. He looked younger, less burdened than she'd yet witnessed. He reached out, his hand covering hers on Max's back. Welcome home, Willow. The phrase lingered, a delicate promise. Home. It resonated, felt secure, like a fresh beginning waited.